Brought to you by 𝩢𝩺𝩧𝩺 Documentaries. Himyarite Kingdom. The Himyarite Kingdom, or Himyar, historically referred to as the Homerite Kingdom by the Greeks and the Romans, was a kingdom in ancient Yemen. Established in 110 BCE, it took as its capital the ancient city of Zafar, to be followed at the beginning of the 4th century by what is the modern-day city of Sana'a. The kingdom conquered neighbouring Saba in c. 25 BCE, Qataban in c. 200 CE, and Hadramaut c. 300 CE. Its political fortunes relative to Saba changed frequently until it finally conquered the Sabaean Kingdom around 280. Himyar then endured until it finally fell to invaders from the kingdom of Aksum in 525. History. The Himyarite Kingdom was the dominant polity in Arabia until 525. Its economy was based on agriculture, and foreign trade centered on the export of frankincense and myrrh. For many years, the kingdom was also the major intermediary linking East Africa and the Mediterranean world. This trade largely consisted of exporting ivory from Africa to be sold in the Roman Empire. Ships from Himyar regularly traveled the East African coast, and the state also exerted a large amount of influence, both cultural, religious and political, over the trading cities of East Africa, whilst the cities of East Africa remained independent. The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea describes the trading empire of Himyar and its ruler Charubael, who is said to have been on friendly terms with Rome. Early period 115 BC until 300 AD. During this period, the kingdom of Himyar conquered the kingdoms of Saba and Qataban, and took Radan, Zafar for its capital instead of Marib. Therefore, they have been called Du-Radan. In the early 2nd century AD, Saba and Qataban split from the kingdom of Himyar, yet in a few decades Qataban was conquered by Hadramaut, whereas Saba was finally conquered by Himyar in the late 3rd century. Zafar's ruins still lie on Mudawa mountain near the town of Yaram. During this period, they began to decline and fall. Their trade failed to a very great extent, firstly, because of the Nabatean domain over the north of Ijaz, secondly, because of the Roman superiority over the naval trade routes after the Roman conquest of Egypt, Syria and the north of Hijaz, and thirdly, because of intertribal warfare. Thanks to the 3 above-mentioned factors, families of Qataban were disunited and scattered about all over Arabia. Jewish monarchy. The Himyarite kings appear to have abandoned polytheism and converted to Judaism around the year 380, several decades after the conversion of the Ethiopian kingdom of Aksum to Christianity, though no changes occurred in its script, calendar, or language. This date marks the end of an era in which numerous inscriptions record the names and deeds of kings, and dedicate buildings to local and major gods. From the 380s, temples were abandoned and dedications to the old gods ceased, replaced by references to Ramanan, the Lord of Heaven, or Lord of Heaven and Earth. The political context for this conversion may have been Arabia's interest in maintaining neutrality and good trade relations with the competing empires of Byzantium, which first adopted Christianity under Constantine the Great, and the Sasanian Empire, which alternated between Zurvanism and Manichaeism. One of the first Jewish kings, Tubal-Cain Asad, is believed to have converted following a military expedition into northern Arabia in an effort to eliminate Byzantine influence. The Byzantine emperors had long eyed the Arabian Peninsula and sought to control the lucrative spice trade en route to India. The Byzantines hoped to establish a protectorate by converting the inhabitants to Christianity. Some progress had been made in northern Arabia, but with little success in Himyar. Abu Karaba's forces reached Yathrib and, meeting no resistance, they passed through the city, leaving the king's son behind as governor. Abu Kariba soon received news that the people of Yathrib had killed his son. He turned back in order to wreak vengeance on the city. After cutting down the palm trees, from which the inhabitants derived their main income, he laid siege to the city. The Jews of Yathrib fought side by side with their pagan neighbors. During the siege, Abu Kariba fell severely ill. Two Jewish scholars in Yathrib, Kaab and Asad, by name, called on the king in his camp and used the knowledge of medicine to restore him to health. While attending the king, they pleaded with him to lift the siege and make peace. The Sage's appeal is said to have persuaded Abu Kariba. He called off his attack, and also embraced Judaism along with his entire army. At his insistence, the two Jewish scholars accompanied the Ḥimyarite king back to his capital, where he demanded that all his people convert to Judaism. Initially, there was great resistance, but after an ordeal had justified the king's demand and confirmed the truth of the Jewish faith, many Himyarites embraced Judaism. Some historians argue that the conversions were not due to political motivations, but that Judaism, by its philosophical, simplistic and austere nature, was attractive to the nature of the Semitic people. Abu Kariba continued to engage in military campaigns and met his death under unclear circumstances. Some scholars believe that his own soldiers killed him. He left 3 sons, Asan, Amru, and Zora, all of whom were minors at the time. After Abu Kariba's demise, a pagan named Dushantir seized the throne. In the reign of Subabi Yaquf, the son of Abu Karib Asad, a certain Azchir, a Christian missionary from Najran, was put to death after he had erected a chapel with a cross. Christian sources interpret the event as a martyrdom at Jewish hands, the site for his execution, Najran, being said to have been chosen on the advice of a rabbi. But indigenous sources do not mention persecutions on the grounds of faith, and it may have been merely to deter the extension of Byzantine influence. The first Aksumite invasion took place sometime in the 5th century and was triggered by the murder of some Byzantine merchants. 2 Christian sources, including the Zutnan Chronicle, once attributed to Dionysius I, tell Marnaroyo, which was written over 3 centuries later. The Himyarite king motivated the killings by stating, "This is because in the countries of the Romans the Christians wickedly harass the Jews who live in their countries and kill many of them. Therefore I'm putting these men to death." In retaliation, the Aksumites invaded the land and thereafter established a bishopric and built Christian churches in Zafar. The Jewish monarchy in Himyar ended with the reign of Yusuf, known as 𝩢𝩣𝩺𝩧𝩣, who in 523 attacked the Christian population of Najran. By the year 500, on the eve of the regency of Muthad-i-Lanyanaf, the kingdom of Himyar exercised control over much of the Arabian Peninsula. It was during his reign that the Himyarite Kingdom began to become a tributary state of Aksum, the process concluding by the time of the reign of Mahdi Karib Yaffa, a Christian appointed by the Aksumites. A coup d'état ensued, with 𝩢𝩣𝩺𝩧𝩣, who had attempted to overthrow the dynasty several years earlier, assuming authority after killing the Aksumite garrison in Zafar. He then proceeded to engage the Ethiopian guards and their Christian allies in the Tihama coastal lowlands facing Abyssinia. After taking the port of Mukawon, where he burnt down the local church, and advanced south as far as the fortress of Madaban overlooking the Bab el-Mandeb, where he expected Caleb el-Asbah to land his fleet. The campaign eventually killed between 11,500 and 14,000, and took a similar number of prisoners. Mukawin became his base, while he dispatched one of his generals, a Jewish prince by the name of Sheroi Yakbul-Yazan against Najran, a predominantly Christian oasis, with a good number of Jews, who had supported with troops his earlier rebellion, but refused to recognize his authority after the massacre of the Aksumite garrison. The general blocked the caravan route connecting Najran with eastern Arabia. Religious culture. During this period, references to pagan gods disappeared from royal inscriptions and texts on public buildings, and were replaced by references to a single deity. Inscriptions in the Sabaean language, and sometimes Hebrew, called this deity Rahman, Lord of the heavens and earth, the God of Israel, and Lord of the Jews. Prayers invoking Rahman's blessings on the people of Israel often ended with the Hebrew words Shalom and Amen. There is evidence that the solar goddess Shams was especially favored in Himyar, being the national goddess and possibly an ancestral deity. Ancestral divisions of Himyar. Khalan septs emigrated from Yemen to dwell in the different parts of the Arabian Peninsula prior to the Great Flood, due to the failure of trade under the Roman pressure and domain on both sea and land trade routes following Roman occupation of Egypt and Syria. Naturally enough, the competition between Khalan and Himyar led to the evacuation of the first and the settlement of the second in Yemen. The emigrating septs of Khalan can be divided into four groups. Another tribe of Himyar, known as Banu Qudra, also left Yemen and dwelt in Samarra on the borders of Iraq. However, the majority of the Himyar Christian royalty migrated into Jordan, Al-Karak, where initially they were known as Banu Himyar. They later on moved to central Jordan to settle in Madaba under the family name of Al-Haymana. Language. It is a matter of debate whether the Himyarite language was spoken in the southwestern Arabian Peninsula until the 10th century. Amharic, the language of the Amhara and official language of Ethiopia, is likely an altered form of Himyaritic, according to the Penny Encyclopedia of the Diffusion of Useful Knowledge. Dr. Stephen L. Danver also wrote in Native Peoples of the World, an encyclopedia of groups, cultures, and contemporary issues, that the name Amhara is believed to be derived from Himyarites. Thank you for watching. Brought to you by 𝩢𝩺𝩧 Documentaries. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.